In this video, I'm going to show you how to turn grocery store cakes into a custom birthday cake. Hi there, my name is Carly and welcome to my channel Adventures in Yum. I've seen some content creators that I follow turn grocery store cakes into amazing wedding cakes. So I decided to challenge myself to see if I could make a custom birthday cake out of grocery store cakes. I chose to utilize the cake and frosting as much as possible and not rely on having to make anything. I basically wanted to avoid making any kind of buttercream or anything extra if I could help it. Have you tried transforming grocery store cakes before? Let me know in the comments below. I decided to get these sprinkle cakes because the only other options for these types of cakes were chocolate and vanilla, both of which had cake crumbs covering the sides. I figured that at least with the sprinkle cakes, I could get some kind of pretty colors out of them. Also, they were on sale, so I couldn't beat the price. First, I used an offset spatula to carefully remove the frosting. The top had less sprinkles, so I added that to one bowl, while I added the frosting with tons of sprinkles from the side of the cake into a separate bowl. I also had a third bowl to add buttercream that had cake scraps in it because I didn't want to see any cake scraps in the final coating of frosting when reassembling the cake. Instead, I used the cake crumb buttercream for crumb coating the cake. After the first was done, it was time to do the second. After both cakes are done, here are all 3 bowls of frosting. The largest is the frosting from the tops of the cakes, the middle size has the sprinkle coated buttercream from the side of the cakes, and the smallest has the frosting with cake scraps in it. I decided to thoroughly mix the sprinkles into the frostings because they were already dyeing the buttercream pink and purple, so I just wanted to make sure that all of the frosting in each bowl was the same color. Next, it was time to cut the cakes. I decided to use a cookie or biscuit cutter that was about 3.5 inches or 8.89 centimeters in diameter. This allowed me to get 2 circles out of each cake. I set the extra cake aside to make some cake pop dough later. Now it was time to assemble the cake. I added a little dollop of buttercream to act as the glue to keep the cake on the cake board and then added one of the cake layers. Next, I added a little bit of the purple frosting and smoothed it into a thin, even layer. I then repeated this process until the cake was fully stacked. Because I made this cake pretty tall, especially for its very small diameter, I needed to use something to keep the cake together. I had some unused straws, so I decided to use them as my dowels to keep my cake straight. Using my offset spatula, I then spread some of the frosting that had the cake crumbs in it into an even layer on the outside of the cake, also known as a crumb coat. Once I got it as smooth as possible, I placed it in the fridge to allow the frosting to firm up for about 20 to 30 minutes. After allowing the cake to chill, I added the purple frosting around the middle of the side of the cake. I then decided to add some Wilton white sparkling sugar sprinkles to this buttercream to give it more sparkle and texture. With thoroughly clean hands, I attempted to start adding the sprinkles by cupping some of them in my hand and then trying to add it to the side of the cake like that, but it was just messy and it didn't work out like I had hoped it would. So instead, I used one of my fingers to gently press some of the sprinkles onto the side of the cake until it was completely covered. Next, I added the pink frosting to the top and bottom of the sides of the cake, as well as covering the top of the cake. I made sure to also slightly overlap the purple frosting. I realized that the height and softness of this cake continued to make it very unstable, so I decided to cut the straw in half and have a couple of straw dowels in the cake and hopefully make it more stable. Once I got the buttercream as smooth as I possibly could, which wasn't easy because of the sprinkles and the frosting, I used some Wilton Edible Metallic Gold paint to brush the light colored buttercream along the rough edges. This added some really nice dimension and color to the cake. If you're curious, this decoration style is called a fault line cake. It's called this because it almost looks like a cake broke apart to expose the inside. I've wanted to try this design for a while now, so while I was scraping and separating the buttercream into the bowls earlier, I just decided to finally attempt this design. It's not my favorite cake design because I personally prefer a smooth-sided cake, but it's always good to try something new. What do you think about fault line cakes? Are you a fan or do you prefer other cake designs? Make sure to drop your thoughts in the comments below. Once I was done with the gold, I decided to add 2 more straw pieces because, oh my gosh, you guys, this cake was like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It did not want to stay straight. One thing I would do in the future to improve this is to level the tops of the cake slices. The particular cakes that I bought were not perfectly flat on top. but I thought that if I added the buttercream to help kind of balance it, it wouldn't lean. However, I also underestimated how little buttercream I actually had to work with, so I wasn't able to correct it like I hoped. My straw dowels definitely helped, but now I know how to improve the structural issues in possible future grocery store cake videos. And I'm curious, do you guys like seeing grocery store cakes transformed into a different kind of cake, or do you prefer seeing a cake made from scratch? Let me know in the comments below. I also decided to add a little bit of buttercream to the top to cover the straws, and then I placed the cake in the fridge to chill while I worked on the cake topper. Next, I added some of the cake scraps and remnant frosting to a bowl and mixed that up. I added a little bit too much buttercream, so I mixed in some more cake scraps. Once the mixture was a good consistency that it could hold a shape, I rolled some into a ball and then set it aside. Then I cut the bottom off of a waffle cone, making sure that the size of the cone was not too big or too small for the ball of cake pop dough that I just made. And finally, it was time to make the ganache. I only needed a little bit, so I added a half cup of white chocolate chips and 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream to a microwave-safe bowl. I heated it in short increments of 15 to 30 seconds at a time, making sure to stir in between each heating. Once all of the chocolate was completely melted, I set it aside to slightly cool for a couple of minutes. Before we finish this cake, make sure to hit that like button and click subscribe for more yummy videos. Now it was time to put everything together. I had a tiny bit of frosting left over from my grocery store cupcake video, so I added a little bit of that to the top and smoothed it into a flat layer. This acted as my glue for the cake ball that I then placed on top in the center of the cake. I then poured the ganache over the top of the cake ball and let it flow over the top of the cake. It started to set very quickly, so I used my offset spatula to smooth it out and add some dripping down the side of the cake. I usually like to be very precise with my drip cakes, so I just decided to take a chance this time by adding the ganache in a different way to try to make it look more messy, like it would in real life when an ice cream cone falls onto the ground. Next, because the ganache set very quickly, I used the same sprinkle finger technique from earlier to add some of the extra sprinkles that were in the bottom of the cake containers. I was so happy when I decided to keep these because I loved it so much more with the added sprinkles on top of the ganache. Finally, I added the waffle cone at an angle and gently pressed it into the ganache and cake pop so that it would stay when everything's set. And there we have our ice cream fault line birthday cake made from grocery store cakes. You can also find a blog post about this cake on my website, adventuresandyum.net. The link is in the description below. If you're interested in checking out some of the products I used in this video, please make sure to check out the video description below for the Amazon links. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time for another yummy adventure.